Okay, so Thursdays are relationship days in the Brave to Be Me group, which means we like to talk about our relationships. Now, remember that relationships doesn't necessarily just mean romantic relationships. It can be any kind of relationship. So bear that in mind as I'm chatting. And if you have any questions as I go, or if you're watching this on replay and you have any questions, please just pop them in the comments and then I can answer. So the post today was all about how how often what we do is we expect the other person to change and to show up the way that we want them to show up, or to be the person that we want them to be. And we do this in a variety of ways. You know, sometimes it's literally just nagging, like do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. Sometimes we resort to manipulating. Sometimes we don't actually voice it, but there's definitely that undercurrent. Hi Pam, yay, thanks for joining me. And yeah, sometimes it's just a feeling or like a wish that you have, or like a longing where you're just like, I wish this person would be different to how they are. And it's not really fair because everybody grows at their own pace. And what right do we have to say how quickly or how slowly somebody should be growing and developing? And we all go through our own things, you know, our own stuff. So it's not really fair to place a time limit on when, you know, how quickly you think somebody should be developing. I know that that is difficult if the person that you wish was different is like a spouse or someone that, you know, you live with or you see every single day, like a boss maybe, yeah, or a romantic partner. But yeah, I guess the nature of the relationship would determine a little bit more, you know, what the stakes are for you. But I find it far more useful. And what I found in my own personal experience is that it's so much more useful to focus on myself and making sure that my side of the street is tidy before I start making demands about the other side of the street, about somebody else. Does that make sense? Let me know. Like, have you experienced this? Have you been in relationships where you thought, like, oh, I wish this person was different, or I wish they did this differently? Maybe it's not that you want their entire personality to change, but maybe it's just you wish that there were certain things that they would do differently. You know, and sometimes it's, I mean, like reasonable things, like, you know, if I said to Garth, please pick up your wet towel, kind of a thing, like that's a reasonable request to make. So I'm not talking about stuff like that, but more like personality flaws as we would see them. You know, like if we have an interest, let's just say in like spiritual growth, and your partner doesn't, maybe stop expecting them to have that interest because they don't, and they don't have to. That can just be yours, as an example. And sometimes what happens with relationships is that the dynamics between us feels quite off. And so you might find that you end up having like the same old argument about the same old thing that like you always argue about. And again, doesn't have to just be romantic. This can be any relationship. But you kind of find yourself in that same old dynamic, and it's getting tired and it's getting old and it's getting frustrating because it's like, why do we always end up here? I wish that they would X, Y, Z. We cannot control how somebody else behaves. That is impossible. Believe me, I have tried, okay? I am a perfectionist. I, you know, can be quite controlling. Believe me, in my past, I've been in many relationships with people who I thought needed rescuing or changing, or had all the potential in the world, if only I could draw it out of them. And like, that might sound like a nice thought, but actually it's deeply disrespectful because I was expecting them to be somebody else, what I saw in them. And remember, what I see in them is through my own filters. And being a life coach by trade, although the only relationship I've been in since I've been a life coach is with Garth, and we went through this as well. But being a naturally life coachy kind of person, even before I became a life coach, I do see the potential in people. That's who I am. So whatever your, you know, whatever your outlook on life is, chances are you are seeing the other person through that filter. It's not really fair. Sometimes people do behave badly. Let's just put that out there. Sometimes we are in toxic relationships with people who are not respectful of us. And yes, I think it is fair, in my opinion, to expect them to stop disrespecting you. But that's a little bit of a different conversation, maybe, because that requires a lot of open communication and a willingness on both of your parts to kind of meet in the middle somewhere and create a new way forward. So I'm not talking about like heavily toxic situations, but more just your general outlook on relationships when you feel someone should be a certain way or doing a certain thing, and actually, is that fair? Just have a quick sip of water. Oh, that was in the freezer, so it was icy, and now it's just dripping as it melts. Anyway. So, you cannot control how somebody else behaves, but what you are in control of is yourself. So like I said, make sure that your side of the street is clear before you start demanding how somebody else's side should look. Makes sense. Okay, good. I'm glad I know you. So I always imagine relationships like these two circles. So this is me and this is the other person, any kind of relationship. And our circles overlap like this. So there's this little piece in the middle where you and I share a little bit. And I call that our shared experience, our relationship. And what happens is the energy that you bring will affect that shared piece in the middle just as much as the energy the other person brings will affect that shared piece in the middle. So you are not in control of the other person's circle, right, of the other person, but you are in control of what you bring to the shared experience, to the relationship. So, like, one of the things that I have found quite useful is sometimes if I have an expectation of somebody, like let's say I wish somebody was more compassionate. If I meet them with compassion, with that thing that I wish that they were, often they tend to give that thing to me. That sounded a bit confusing. I don't know if that made sense. But basically, if you can give the thing that you most want that other person to be, sometimes because of that shared experience in the middle, they pick up on that energy and it almost like gives them permission in a way to start showing up that way. So I remember once thinking about a particular person and going, I just wish that they were a little bit softer, just a little bit more compassionate, like not so like hectic hard all the time. And so I started treating them with more compassion. I started like trying to understand why they were so hectic all the time and took a much softer approach and treated them with a lot more compassion. And would you know it, they softened, and I'm not saying that this will always work. I'm just saying it's worth a try. And you could really apply this to any situation in life, but give the thing that you most want to get. So yeah, change the quality of that shared experience, the bit in the middle, and you might just be inviting the other person to show up differently. Whether they do or not is their choice, 100%. And they may still choose not to show up in the way that you would love them to. And then you have a choice to make. Either you accept them as they are and you let go of your expectations, or you walk away and you seek out a different relationship from someone who will meet the expectation that you have. Which sounds a bit harsh, but I mean, I don't really see what other option there is other than to keep fighting about it. So for me, you either practice radical acceptance of who they are, or you walk away. There would be, I guess, not quite as black and white of that, but those were like my last resort two options. But the first thing would be remember those circles and start changing how you're showing up. If you can start changing how you're showing up, you're inviting them to start changing how they're showing up too. After that, if nothing changes, you then have that choice to make. But I believe that something will change, and it's certainly something I've witnessed with my clients, is that especially when I bring in some TA theory, some transactional analysis, when I start sharing a little bit of TA with them, which basically gives you a deeper understanding of human dynamics, relationship dynamics, and what's going on like psychologically below the surface. But when I start bringing in some TA, then suddenly it's like, oh, now I get what's been going on. Okay, these are the options available to me to show up differently. Like, this is what I could do differently. And when you start doing that, I'm telling you now, like, the other person does start shifting, because the whole quality of that relationship, of that shared experience in the middle, is different. And it's like cause and effect, something is different. Now I have to respond to that. And you might find at first, if you, like, let's say putting down boundaries is something that you struggle to do. Let's say that you always put every other person around you first. that you don't honor your own needs, that you really like to, to be everything to everyone. And so you're just a giving person. And that's beautiful. But it's also exhausting, and it's going to lead to burnout. It's also going to lead to resentment, because we all have needs too. And so if you deny your own needs, then it's a little bit counterintuitive, but because you could just fulfill your needs, but we don't, because us natural giver rescuer types, we give to other people, and we don't look after ourselves. Okay, so let's say that that's the dynamic that exists, and I think for many people in this group it probably is. If you were to imagine those two circles, right, you and the other person, if you're that kind of person and your boundaries around self-care and needs is not very strong, then imagine that the boundary line around your circle is dotted. It's broken up into pieces. There's gaps. Meaning, if the other person has a really strong border around their circle and yours is like flimsy and slattered and there's gaps, when you meet in the middle, you can't stand strong against this like hectic border over here. So it's almost like here's you and there's them. And you just get eaten alive. Does that make sense? So the thing that I have found to be very, very useful is to start working on your own boundaries and to start working to honor your own needs. Because by doing that, your boundary line becomes much more solid, and you'll stop leaking energy all over the place, and you'll be able to be contained, but like in a good way. You'll be strong. Your borders will be strong. And then you can choose who you let in to that shared experience. And then you can also stand strong and empowered against whatever the other person is bringing, or with what the other person is bringing. So this is why boundaries are so important in relationships, because if your boundaries are not strong, then you just disintegrate. Like, people can so easily take advantage of you, consciously or not, you know. Like, often when two people come together in whatever kind of relationship, there's a common childhood wounding that's in the middle. So, like, for example, what was a very common dynamic in some of my past relationships has been that I'm that nurturer, that caretaker, and the other person often had mother issues. Like, it was quite uncanny, actually. My first few boyfriends were like, they all had mother issues. Either a mom had passed away, or mom was quite absent, or something like that. And here I came as like the mom substitute. So it was the same wounding, but it was from opposite ends. So they kind of perfectly complemented each other. This person's looking for a mom, and here I come wanting to be a mom. Oh, great. Except that's not a very healthy dynamic for, in this instance, a romantic relationship, right? But in any relationship, it can play out that way. Do you know what I mean? So you can be that real giver, and somebody's coming who doesn't want to stand on their own 2 feet, who wants people to do stuff for them, because secretly they're feeling really disempowered. So they're like, okay, well, you just take responsibility for me, please. And then you're like, oh yeah, I love taking responsibility for people. I'm so capable and strong and nurturing and kind and caring. I'll do that for you. And there you go. You know, attracted by that same wounding. And again, doesn't have to be romantic. You can think of many friendships where stuff like this plays out. Work situations as well. I mean, I must say thank you so much to everyone who's taken the time to give me feedback on the toxic relationships market research that I've been doing, because it's quite interesting, actually. Most of the feedback I've been getting has not been about romantic relationships. Some of it has, but a lot of it has also been about work dynamics, of working with bosses who are quite dominating and critical because they want to have this power over you. And then you feeling like you can't speak up for yourself and totally disempowered. So again, there's that wounding in the middle. There's somebody wanting to be powerful, and there's somebody else feeling powerless. It's opposite ends of the same wound. Yeah, so first things first is become aware of what your inner story stuff is. So like I said, for me, it's being that over-nurturing person, giving too much, not having strong boundaries. So with those two circles of here's me and here's you, and here's the bit in the middle where we overlap. Imagine if I was in a coaching session and I didn't have strong boundaries. Imagine what might happen. If you came, let's say, as a client who was feeling really disempowered, and I was coming and I was super over nurturing, like what dynamic do you think might play out? You know, I might like give and give and give and give. May probably undercharge, you know, give you a lot for free, give you all my time, not stick to time boundaries, like might start giving you advice because I really want to help you and you might be struggling, or do you know what I mean? Like all kinds of unhealthy stuff can play out if my boundaries are not strong. So knowing that in my personal life, that was something that I tended to do, I had to do a lot of work, and something that really helped me with that was learning TA when I became a coach. It really helped me understand what I was doing and why I was doing it. So as always, awareness is the first step. You have to become aware. Okay. So become aware. What are your default settings? What is that inner story? What are your tendencies in relationships? And where are they currently playing out? Okay. Once you know what your thing is, then you can start challenging yourself to do it differently. Okay. So rather than like if my thing is being over nurturing and the other person's thing is that they just take and like they don't help themselves out. Like to go back to the post from today, the relationships post, I might be sitting here thinking, oh, I just wish they would take some responsibility. I just wish they would like stand on their own 2 feet and figure this out. Like, I just wish that they would look after me sometimes. But can you see how me sitting there wishing that is not taking responsibility for the part that I'm playing in the relationship? Because if I wish somebody else would take responsibility, why would they ever do that if I was constantly doing that? Do you know what I mean? So if I want someone to take responsibility, I have to stop taking responsibility for them and give them the space to do that. Does that make sense? But if I'm going to continue just like holding the reins and bearing the load and doing all the stuff, there's no space for them to do that. So why would they? So have a look at whatever the particular, and that's just one example of a dynamic, but have a look at whatever dynamic is playing out between you and another person and think like, okay, well, how am I like, okay, so this is how I wish they would be. And this is how I notice I'm being. What's not working in that picture? What can I do differently to create space for them to become whatever it is that I want them to become? Again, remembering that they don't have to. But if you begin to show up differently in that shared experience, they might too. There's always two sides balance. Exactly. It takes two to tango, as they say. So here's me, here's you in the shared experience in the middle. Like, I'm not solely responsible for what happens there. Both of our energy comes into that mix. So I can't change you, but I can change me. I can start doing it differently. If I want to stop being so responsible, I can stop taking responsibility. If I wish that you would be more compassionate, I can start being more compassionate. You know, what other dynamics go on for you guys? Let me know. Or do you kind of resonate with what I've been sharing? Let me know. Maybe it's different for you. It's hard to be consistent showing up in a better way. Yeah, it is hard because if you... Sorry, this little voice in my head was like, oh, that wasn't very compassionate. I was just like, yes, it is hard. It is hard, Annalie. Thank you for sharing. No, but I feel you. It is. Like, for me, it's been a lifelong journey. And the more aware you are, the more you have the opportunity to put this stuff into practice. And the more you do put it into practice, the easier it does get. I really do think that. But yes, that like first and probably even middle part is hard because you got to be consistent. But, you know, every day is a new opportunity to do it again. So if today you were tired or you didn't feel well or you skipped lunch and you were hungry or hangry, you know, and you got home and you barked at your partner or you shouted at the kids or you did whatever it is that you do, whatever that may be, that's okay. Do it differently next time. You know, learn from that. Like, we're not striving for perfection here. We're striving for progress. Progress over perfection, because perfection's impossible anyway. And you're not going to get it right all of the time. but you are in charge. So just choose to be in charge as often as you can, as often as is available to you. But it won't be available to you all the time. Sometimes you will go back onto your default settings. You're human, so it's okay. And also be patient with yourself. But sometimes there is a fear that that person won't step up, so you fill in that gap. I've heard this being said, I take charge because you don't. Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I used to say a lot in my relationships. And there's this really interesting thing that happens in a coaching session. And it sort of popped into my head now. It feels like a little bit of a parallel thing. Sometimes in a coaching session, the coach will ask a question, and then the client is either taken by surprise and has to stop and think about the answer, or they're struggling to find an answer, whatever the case is, but there's this moment of silence. And it is so inviting as a coach to hear that silence and to get uncomfortable with that silence and to jump in and almost rescue your client and go, oh, what I meant was, or let me ask another question, or maybe I could offer a suggestion, something to that effect. But that silence is where all the magic lies, because that silence gives the client the space to figure it out, or to reach the conclusion that they can't figure it out and to ask for help. And that's a really empowering thing to do. Even though it might feel quite uncomfortable, it is quite empowering. So in a coaching setting, when you give somebody space, like, good things come from that. And I think you could apply it in this situation too. And that's certainly what I've personally done in my own personal relationships is I see the gap, and usually I would jump to fill it, but I'm like, well, if I keep doing that, they'll keep expecting me to. So it might be really frustrating the first few times when they don't, because they're used to me doing it, but eventually they're going to realize. And depending on because it'll give them space, and they'll start thinking like, oh, why isn't that person doing what they normally do? What's that about? And the cogs will start turning, and they'll start figuring that out for themselves, But I think it's also important to have really good communication. I mean, like we were talking about boundaries yesterday in the Mindset membership. If the gap that you are creating is because you've put down a boundary, it's very important to communicate that to someone. So, I mean, let's use an example. So if I feel like, all right, here's a good one. A real life one. I mean, it's like a silly example, and you could use this in whatever other context, but it's an example. So Hamlet is now quite old, my 16-year-old sausage dog, for those who don't know. He's now quite old, and he often needs to go out to make a wee in the middle of the night. And it's really frustrating because I get broken sleep. I feel like I'm like a mother of a newborn baby or something. I just never sleep through the night because my old sausage dog keeps waking me up to go outside because his blood is not that strong anymore. And it's every single night. I now say like maybe one night out of 10 he'll sleep through the night. But every night it's at least once, and sometimes it's twice, and sometimes it's 3 times. Okay. And what I notice is that we'll go through a period of, let's say, like a few weeks even, where I'm the only one who gets up during the night. And so that would be an example of a time when I could say, put a boundary down, and I did, and said, like, look, I'm going crazy because I'm not sleeping properly. Like, can we please take turns? If you hear him get up, like, please, like, don't wait to see what will happen because he will just lay on the floor. You got to get up and let him out immediately when you hear him get up. And don't wait to see if I'm going to get up first because I will. So I would appreciate it if you would take a turn too. And what I could have done, one of the options would have been to just lay in bed and wait and see what happens. So that, like, waiting for somebody to step up. And I suppose eventually Garth might get up and tend to Hamlet, but in the meantime, like I said, Hamlet might be on the floor or whatever. Or Garth might not, he might sleep through. So what I found to be much more effective was to have a conversation and to say, you know, I'm not getting any sleep. Please will you take a turn? Really appreciate that. So I gave him the gap to step up, but I told him what my expectation was, had a conversation about it, stated my boundary, I stated my need, and then gave him the opportunity to fill it. Because then that night, I didn't just jump straight up quickly as soon as I heard Hamlet get up. I waited to see, like, is he going to get up, you know? And he did, because he's really cool like that. But not everybody will do the thing that you've asked them to do. But then that's the point where you could like take that step back and just wait. But if you haven't communicated that to them and you're just suddenly pulling back, you're going to leave the other person feeling quite confused. So I don't know how effective that will be. And in some cases it may work, but it feels a little bit like a game to me. So I think being honest and saying and communicating and saying like, look, this is what I'm feeling. I'd really love for this to be a little bit different. Like, what do you think? Let's have a chat about it, you know? Like, how could we figure this out between us? I mean, if you think about like a friend, for example, that you maybe, you notice that like you're not, like you're always the one who's making the plans, let's say, and you're like, is this a one-sided relationship? Like, what's happening with this friend? You could not contact them. Like I hear about this happening all the time where someone will say, well, I'm just not going to contact them and I'm going to see how long it takes for them to contact me. But you're playing a game. You're not being authentic and saying like, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you could make some effort with making plans too. Or are things just so hectic on your side, like that you just like what's happening, you know, and give the person the benefit of the doubt. Like it probably is not that they don't want to see you. It's probably that there's some hectic stuff going on their end and that's why they don't get in touch. But maybe they're super happy whenever you do get in touch. You know, and you got to negotiate and figure out, okay, well, how can we move forward in a way that works for both of us? But you're only going to figure that out if you have a conversation. So, yeah. Hope that this has been useful. Wow, that's cool. I struggle with communication. Yeah, most people struggle with communication. I mean, like you're not alone in that. It's really, it's really, it's a really vulnerable thing to do, to put yourself out there like that. Because you don't know how the other person's going to respond. And that's why it's so scary, because they might just stomp all over your vulnerability. But I think that's also how trust is formed in relationships and real intimacy, because you're giving them an opportunity to respect you by putting yourself out there. So it does require quite a bit of courage. And that's why our whole thing in this group is being brave to be me. So it's hard, but it's doable. And one step at a time, you know. Maybe one time you notice you don't speak up and maybe you feel bad about that afterwards. And like, don't beat yourself up, you're learning. We learn as we grow. We learn as we grow. Okay, so bit by bit, piece by piece. Interesting, thanks, Kirsty. You are welcome, Killian. Thank you for joining me live, guys. If anything else comes to mind, feel free to pop it in the comments. I'll come back and I will answer. And yeah. Yes, true, and I'm used to dishing out commands. Yeah, it can be really hard, and I say this as a, you know, recovering, I don't even know what the word is, perfectionist, needer, parent, even though I don't have any children. It can be really hard to start relinquishing control. That was the word, control. It can be really hard to start relinquishing control when you're used to being the one who's in control all the time. But like, take a deep breath and try it out and see what happens. And it might be a total disaster the first time, and that's okay. Like, life is messy. Let's get messy. And let me know if you need any kind of support. Okay. Sending you love. Enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend. And thank you so much. Bye.